Okay, so here I am in my little garden patch that's on the west side of our house. It receives the most sunlight. I really need to weed eat, so please excuse the tall weeds around it. But as you can see, my tomatoes are mostly dead. I have completely ignored them for the past few weeks. Honestly, I got a tremendous harvest and my freezer is actually full of tomatoes. I had Cherokee tomatoes, purple tomatoes, and celebrities, and lots of grape tomatoes. A few other different varieties I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a wonderful harvest, and I've kind of just let this bed go just to, you know how it is. You have a million things on your plate, you can only do so much, and this has not been a priority. So it looks awful, but my plan is today to get out and clean it all out, and then I'm going to determine if I need to pull the weed fabric up or if I can go forward with planting some cabbage in the existing holes, at least maybe where I had the squash and zucchini, which was right here. I still have beautiful sunflowers. I did some succession planting with those so I could have them all throughout the summer. They look beautiful. And then I also have these volunteer, I believe it's sweet potatoes. I don't know, I haven't done potatoes in forever, but they decided to take over when I let go of the garden. So I don't even really know what's going on under the ground there with those. But anyhow, and then we have my pretty trellis where my blackberries have kind of taken over part of it. And I need to trim those back and just take care of some of those things before I start my fall plans. But in general, I was really happy with the weed barrier. It did save me a lot of weeding work. I know I've heard pros and cons of both, but I really, really liked it. I did have weeds pop up along the edge, and I did mess up some of the edges trying to weed eat there. But we really try not to use chemicals at all on our farm if possible to keep it organic. So I just dealt with the weeds. But today, like I said, I want to come in and just talk about my trellising system. I really liked using the T-posts and the cattle panels. And as long as I was out here, you know, every other day pruning the tomatoes from the bottom up, I tried to keep at least 1.5 feet up off the ground, which really helps with powdery mildew. It helps with pest pressure. But as the summer went on and other things took precedence, they just kind of went wild. And I think next year what I would do differently is space them a little bit further out. Most of the varieties that I planted were indeterminate, which means they will grow and grow and grow. They will get 8 to 10 feet tall if I let them, if I tied them up on the cattle panels, which once they got past this, I don't know, I guess it's probably about a 4-foot T-post, I stopped, obviously, because I just didn't have taller T-posts, and I didn't do the panels taller than that, but they kind of just went wild from the top. But I thought it was a really good system. It allowed me, at least for most of the season, to be able to walk through the aisles and pick the tomatoes and keep them pruned and just watch for tomato hornworms and just make sure everything was healthy. As the summer went on and I spent less time out here, it definitely got crazy. This tomato plant's still looking pretty good. I don't see many flower blooms on it, so I see some over there, but for the most part, I think we are done, and I just need to get them pulled up. But overall, I think it was a good system. Like I said, next year I would probably place the rows a little bit further apart. But otherwise, it worked out really well, and I would do the weed fabric again. I'm going to try to save this weed fabric, possibly, and lay it back out the same way next year. It depends, I guess, what it looks like when I get everything pulled up. If it tends to rip a lot when I'm pulling it up, I'm probably going to call it a loss. It's really not that expensive if I have to get another roll of it, but I'm going to attempt to save it. So that is what my plans are for today. Okay, I am back and I am done cleaning up around my garden bed. I got it all weed-eated and I pulled up all the old tomatoes, cut all the ties, pulled all the stakes out, just got it cleaned up so I could get a good look at what the fabric looked like to determine if I was going to leave it down for the winter or fall planting or if I should roll it up. And after looking at it, I'm really pleased with how it held up, and I am going to leave it out over the winter. But I just kind of wanted to go over with you guys some pros and cons of the fabric, what I liked, what I didn't like. I would say, first of all, the biggest con for me was the outer edges of the fabric where it met up to my landscape timbers. I don't like how I didn't figure out how to properly put it around the edges to where no weeds would come up. I know that sounds really picky, but I don't like the way that looks when I spend a lot of time trying to keep it all weed free and it's still just coming up around the edges. And I do think that I kind of messed up my fabric by going in with a weed eater, and I need to figure out a better way to do that next year. And I would say the second con would be the initial startup cost for the weed fabric. I think I bought two or three rolls of 3 by 300 foot, and I think they were around $40 a roll. I did consider that I would be using this fabric for several growing seasons when I chose. I know there were some cheaper brands, and I read a lot of reviews, and I landed on this particular one. I don't remember what the name brand was, but it seemed to hold up really well, and it looks like it could last quite a bit longer. So I'm hoping the initial startup cost was worth it in the end. I think another con is probably the fabric does restrict some of the movement of the earthworms in the soil. Excuse me, being able to just turn the earth when it's covered. So I think it's important that if you do decide to use the landscape fabric, that you have a good soil established, a healthy soil. If you are restricting the earthworms there, that it wouldn't affect it too much because you already have a good soil. So my number one pro for using the weed fabric in the garden is definitely it saves time. I could spend hours out in my garden weeding when I didn't have the fabric down. It didn't matter if I came out every day, even twice a day, I was always weeding. It was like a never-ending project. And I find a lot of peace out in my garden. I love being out there. But I also have a life outside of my garden that I have to take care of. So I never could stay on top of weeding this garden bed, and the weed fabric definitely helped there. So I was pleased with that. So that's the major pro for me. Another pro is the fabric can potentially last for years. If you roll it up when you're done with your summer garden, if you roll it up and put it away, it could potentially last for years. I think I am not going to pull mine up just for lack of time. I think I'm going to leave it down and see how long it lasts. Another pro for me is that it's definitely environmental friendly. Like, I do my best to keep it an organic garden as much as possible. I don't like using chemicals. I'll use diatomaceous earth or neem oil where I can. And having the weed fabric down really helped cut down on pest pressure, I felt like. It just helped with the soil splash control. So we didn't get the powdery mildew, and it just seemed to keep the harmful pests away longer. Which was really nice. They're not laying their eggs in the soil, and I absolutely saw a positive outcome with that there. I guess that's it. I would absolutely recommend the weed fabric. I've liked it, and I'm going to leave it down for my fall garden and see how that works out. Thanks for hanging out with me, y'all.